This week on Low Budget Binge, we follow a psychopath, a medical experiment gone horribly wrong, and 3 international possession-style films. Let's start binging. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Star Vehicle, aka Bleeding Lady, is new on DVD and Blu-ray from Unearthed Films. It's directed and written by Ryan Nicholson. Don, played by Dan Ellis, is a horror aficionado and driver for cast and crew of low-budget horror films. He's also a serial killer. When he begins working on a set, starring his favorite scream queen, Reversa Red, played by Cindy Farraguna, and noticing that not only is she not appreciated on set, but also that the film isn't up to his standards, he begins killing the cast and crew and plans to make his own movie starring Red. There's also Red's stalker to worry about, and a mysterious guy lingering around in the woods to add to the mayhem. Gore ensues. Star Vehicle, aka Bleeding Lady, is another film from Ryan Nicholson, the twisted mind behind Gutterballs and Hanger. If you read my reviews of those films, you know I'm not the biggest fan, as they have a very angry and disturbing tone to them. I know those are often feelings associated with horror, but there's an especially wicked kind of sense of humor and disregard to humanity in these films that doesn't really appeal to me. That said, despite its extremely low budget, look and feel, Star Vehicle at least has an interesting idea and plot going for it. The concept of a serial killer taking over a film set and making his own movie, killing those he doesn't deem deserving of the privilege of making a film, is a pretty good one. And while that idea permeates all of Star Vehicle, it meanders quite a bit and takes its sweet time to get to the point where Don takes over. Once he does pick up the camera with his blood-stained hands, it's almost too late and the film simply erupts into a bunch of blood and screaming rather than taking advantage of that good idea. The other issue is that once Don does start making a film, the action he's capturing really isn't that interesting. This sort of proves the point that it takes some kind of skill to make a film, and it's not as easy as it looks, but that lesson really isn't highlighted or learned by anyone in the cast. Star Vehicle does shine in the way most of Nicholson's films do, the gore department. Blood doesn't just ooze out of people, it squirts in waves. If you like the red stuff, there's plenty to enjoy, and Don's wrath is quite vicious. Gorehounds definitely have something to look forward to with Star Vehicle, and as with most low-budget horror, the gore really is the most professional thing going on here. I do think the 2 leads in Star Vehicle are pretty decent by low-budget film standards. While most of the cast deliver a deadpan or flat performance, Dan Ellis and Cindy Farraguna are solid actors. Ellis is quite menacing as Don, the manic driver. He has a Toby Huss quality to him that makes him likable, but there is a threat just underneath the surface there. Farraguna also does a great job as an actress struggling with her scream queen status and the constant pressures of the entertainment industry, both loving the limelight but hating the negative attention her roles attract. I think out of the 3 Nicholson films I've seen, Star Vehicle is the most watchable. Hanger just wallows in the wrong, and Gutterballs went a step too far with the debauchery for my tastes. And while there is plenty of wrong in Star Vehicle, there are ideas and performances that I liked. This is ultra-low budget stuff here, looking as if it were shot on video and dragging very much in the middle, but Star Vehicle worked occasionally for me. The Old Ways. It's streaming on Netflix, and it's also on demand and digital download. It's directed by Christopher Alender and written by Marcos Gabriel. A headstrong reporter from the U.S. named Christina, played by Brigitte Cali Canales, returns to the Mexican village she was born in and is taken captive by a bruja, played by Julia Vera, and her assistant, played by Sal Lopez, who claims she is possessed by a demon, the same demon who possessed her mother. Chained to the wall and imprisoned in a small cell, Christina must battle her own inner demons, including an addiction to drugs, as well as a supernatural demon she didn't know she carried. The Old Ways isn't the most original of films. It's basically a possession film where the lead's inner demons interconnect with the supernatural invading force. What makes it different is that we don't see a priest compelling the possessed to leave the world with the word of the Lord. It uses, to coin the title, the old ways, in this case, old Mexican shamanism to dispel the demon. Now, I guess witches and the devil might be dance partners in American lore, but in Mexican culture, there's good and bad magic. So using one form of supernatural force to dispel another isn't as counterproductive as it seems. This fact adds a layer to the Old Ways that separates the film from others in its possession subgenre. The Old Ways also has a very likable protagonist. Brigitte Cali Canales is basically a Mexican Lois Lane, leaping into trouble head first and living by the seat of her pants most of the time. Though she is warned not to enter a cursed cave for the story she's working on, she does so anyway, which awakens the demons and gets her into this mess. The problem is that Christina doesn't have a Superman to rescue her here, so we're left with this Lois Lane type confronting what makes her dive into danger so often and coming to terms with that. It makes for an interesting character arc. She's someone who is willing to dance on the edge and snap snide in the most inappropriate of times. I also liked a lot of the visual effects in The Old Ways. The old long hair from the mouth gag is used to grody effect, as are some of the other tried and true symbols of possession, such as when Christina encounters a bunch of snakes in her cell. This is a well-made film, and even when the CG and practical effects are mixed, it makes for an entertaining and vividly exciting film to watch. The high production value definitely elevates the film, even though for most of the movie, it's just Christina's cell where all of the action takes place. The one problem I had with The Old Ways is that it kind of just peters out by the end. The demon isn't dispelled, it simply leaps into someone else, and it's up to Christina to help out someone else to get it out of her. I get it that this takes the story into a less predictable route, following another person who is possessed in the third act, but it almost feels like the idea for a second movie was squished quickly into the end of The Old Ways. The evil power was vanquished way too quickly, and it just doesn't have the same impact as the rest of the film. If you've seen possession films before, you know how this one's going to go. Still, the change in locale and flavor of the opposition to the demon make it feel superficially different. Canales is a charismatic lead, and the effects are subtle but effective. You could do a lot worse with The Old Ways. I commend this film for at least trying to go a different route in a very predictable subgenre of horror. Like Dogs is new on-demand and digital download from Terror Films. It's directed and written by Randy Van Dyke. After being abducted on a morning run, Lisa, played by Annabelle Barrett, is drugged and taken to an unknown location. When she awakens, Lisa finds herself wearing a collar chained inside a cement kennel. There she is given dog food in a bowl and treated as if she were a dog. Soon, Lisa finds that she isn't the only one undergoing this treatment when she meets Adam, played by Ignacio Mantinia, who is chained up in the same way a few kennels down. In order to keep their wits, Lisa and Adam form a bond with one another and plan their escape. But what's really going on here? And who's behind the masks of the people running this kennel for humans? The answers will definitely surprise you. Upon first glance at Like Dogs, one might think this is another one of those low-budget torture porn films that basically rely on gross-out effects, high-pitched screams, and very little when it comes to story. But Like Dogs is a deceiving little film. While one might think this is some low-grade version of Hostel, or maybe even some kind of pervy kink show, Like Dogs actually plays out in a surprising and smart way. There are multiple times in the script where the camera pulls back to reveal another layer to what is happening to Lisa and Adam, and then about 20 minutes later, another twist reveals some new and interesting layer. While the budget is very, very low here, the time and work put into the script was definitely appreciated. Just like Lisa and Adam, I, as the audience, had no idea where things were going, and the plot never failed to surprise me right up until the end. It helps that there's some solid acting going on here. Ignacio Mantinia is decent as Adam, who has a genuine charm to the way he delivers his lines, but it's Annabelle Barrett who is the real standout in Like Dogs. Barrett, as Lisa, has a real charm to her. There's a spark of unpredictability to the way she faces her challenges that makes her extremely likable. This is no easy task, as she is covered in grit and grime for most of the film, and her character requires her to go through a complex series of emotions by the time this whole ordeal is through. Like Dogs doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it is a great example of how a great script and solid performances can make a film shine despite very little money going into it. I recommend anyone who appreciates a good, unpredictable story over everything else to check out this often shocking and always entertaining little indie horror gem. WEKUFE, The Origin of Evil, is new on-demand and digital download on Amazon. It's directed and written by Javier Attridge. A pair of filmmakers, played by Paula Figueroa and Mateus Aldea, who use their real names in this film, head out to Chiloé, a remote Patagonia island in southern Chile, to delve into the connection between the high number of sex crimes in the area and local myths of a monster in the woods. This monster has been known by many names, and as Mateus tells us, many of the creatures from Lovecraft, Poe, and other masters of the macabre originate from the myths of Chile. As Paula and Mateus discuss the pros and cons of the found footage genre, they get closer and closer to uncovering the shocking truth behind the myth of the WEKUFE. The strongest aspect of WEKUFE, The Origin of Evil, is the acting. This is integral to carrying the entire film. Figueroa is mesmerizing as the lead reporter in this story. She's treating this as a legit news story and does a fantastic job talking to everyone from the people in the marketplace to the governor of the island. While she's absolutely ravishing, Paula's main likable trait is her determination to uncover the truth in many scenes where she becomes frustrated when her boyfriend, documentarian Mateus, tries to make this investigation more interesting with morbid facts, comical clowning, and an attempt at affection. There are times when Paula and Mateus are simply chatting and soaking in the Chilean habitat that are entrancing as the mystery itself. Both Aldea and Figueroa are great, but because she is in front of the camera for the bulk of the film, I definitely could see Figueroa becoming an international star with what she does here in the film. This is definitely footage that could pass as if it were really found, and that authenticity makes it more of a solid film. Is there a reason why they don't just drop the camera and get the hell out of there? Well, they're filming a documentary and soaking in the local flavor and never really knowing when something interesting can happen, so they keep the camera rolling. This also seems to be capturing special moments between Paula and Mateus as if they're treating it like a vacation. When things get dire, Mateus uses the camera as both a light source to see what's happening, and he is also still in full investigative mode, desperate to try to capture footage of the weirdness that's happening on the island. WEKUFE is a pretty even film. I was too into simply seeing Paula and Mateus act off of one another to be bored. There are ominous things peppered throughout as the two reporters get closer and closer to uncovering the mystery. These two also keep things fun because they themselves have seen a lot of found footage films. Mateus is an aspiring director and wants to make a found footage film someday. He's frustrated that Spielberg, Scorsese, and the like made their first films in their 20s, and becoming 30, he hasn't done that yet. In between the investigations, Mateus and Paula talk about the horrible cliches in found footage films, which makes for a fun meta-commentary on the genre itself. The payoff in the end is pretty powerful, specifically because one is so invested in the well-being of these two characters. I didn't want anything bad to happen because they were so likable, and because of this, the payoff, though it is quick, is quite satisfying. There is an up-nosed Blair Witch confessional in this movie, but it's done in jest. Paula tears up and puts the camera under her nose to mock the trope in these films. She also comments on how the shaky cam always gets her sick and how the monster is never actually shown at the end of the film. The inclusion of these little comments are what make this film all the more fun to watch because it mentions the problems of the genre and then veers from those expectations. This really is a well-paced mystery, with the situation growing dire by the moment. Though they might not completely realize it, there is danger all around these people as cops are following them, people are avoiding them on the street, and in one extremely creepy scene, masked street performers begin following them around menacingly. WEKUFE is a smart and tension-filled little found footager. The exotic Chilean locale makes it feel as if it has a higher budget than it most likely did. It not only serves as a cool travelogue of a faraway land, it also goes meta at times and comments on the very found footage subgenre of horror it occupies. And while the film points out the subgenre's faults, it also strays from expectations and leads to a shocking ending that is all the more powerful because the talent of the two actors in front of and behind the camera. Finally, we have The Medium, which is new, streaming exclusively on Shudder. It's directed by Banjong Pisanthanakun and written by Choi, Chantavit Dhanasevi, and Hong-jin. A documentary film crew travels to the Islan region of Thailand to follow a local shaman, Nim, played by Shawnee Utuma, who was chosen to be the vessel for an ancient spirit which protects a small community. In the opening moments, we find out Nim never wanted to be the shaman, but when her sister Noi, played by Sirani Yankititen, refused the role, it was Nim's responsibility to take up the mantle as the role has been passed on through their family for generations. But Nim's niece Mink, played by Narilia Gulman Kulpek, begins showing physical signs that she may be ready to take on the responsibility, much to Noi's refusal to accept it. The documentary crew decides to follow Mink as well to document the process, but it turns out it might not be a noble spirit inhabiting Mink, but a different one that is extremely evil and deadly. Now it's up to Nim to use every mystic power she has to rid Mink of this invading evil. The Medium is a trek of a movie. Coming in at over 2 hours, I think a lot of people might not have the stamina to make it through the first hour, which spends a lot of time getting to know the characters, the culture, and the rules of this ancient world that resides alongside our own. But if you do nope out of The Medium, you'll miss one hell of a second half, as it manages to deliver one of the more original, exotic, and creative possession movies you're likely to see. That first hour is prep, giving you everything you need to know about the battle between Nim and the evil entity, and that battle is a potent one. There's a very natural feel to the way The Medium is presented. It starts out not necessarily found footage and is edited in a documentary format, so it's much more akin to Lake Mungo than Blair Witch. There's no shaky camera or first-person POV in this first hour. This feels like a real documentary, making the dangers that Nim faces much more effectively chilling. The cold, unblinking eye of the camera following this family around makes everything look legit and genuine. If you endure that steady but slow pace of the first hour, you're in for one of the more devastating and shocking last 45 minutes you're bound to see this year. Yes, things get a little shakier and Blair Witchy, but while these night cam and handheld scenes do have a lot of found footage aesthetic, that hour prep really works in pulling you into the story. And what a finale The Medium has. It's unpredictable, heartbreaking, and scary. The usual Christ compellings are nowhere to be found. Instead, you see shamanistic chants, bizarre rituals, and strange behavior. Everything culminates in some final scenes that are so shocking you won't believe what you're seeing. Reminiscent in some ways to The Wailing, another excellent international shocker with a slow beginning and a powerful end, The Medium is brave horror. It defies convention and taps into deep primal fears. No one is safe, and there are no guarantees everything is going to work out in the end. It's dangerous filmmaking, the kind of stuff Hollywood is too scared to touch. This is why I love international horror so much. It takes risks and taps into real, palpable horrors, and I guarantee you won't forget The Medium after watching. That'll be it for today. Please chime in down below in the comments and let me know how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. So guys, you know how YouTube works. I'd love to be able to dedicate more time to this channel. I'm not monetized yet, so if you want to help me out, remember to hit all the pertinent bells and whistles down below. Want some spooky comics to read? I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look out for. Both Gravetrancers and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, can be found in only the finest of comic book shops. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on my website, mlmillerwrites.com. If you really want to show your support, I also have a Patreon page at mlmiller. Look for the link to my Patreon page down below. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're